Ever hear about a law and think, wait, is that really still on the books?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Well, get ready, because today we are going deep on some seriously weird laws, specifically West Virginia.
Sounds fun.
We're using weird and forgotten West Virginia laws as our guide, and let me tell you, this thing is packed.
Should be interesting to see what they came up with.
So get ready for some surprises. You might even pick up a tip or two for your next road trip through the Mountain State, right?
I mean, you never know what you might learn.
Exactly. Okay, so flipping through this book, what strikes me is how these laws, no matter how strange they sound now, they really do tell a story about a different time.
Yeah, like a different set of priorities, different worries. It's like a little snapshot of history, but legal history.
Right. Like, take this one. It's against the law to whistle underwater in West Virginia.
Okay, that's pretty specific.
I mean, really, who's out there enforcing that? But it does make you wonder, was it a safety thing to protect fish? Or maybe
Yeah.
noise pollution back before underwater speakers were a thing? What do you think?
Hard to say for sure, but you're right. It's from a different era. Maybe fishermen were getting annoyed, or maybe it's just a joke law someone snuck in. But it definitely gets you thinking, right?
Totally. Okay, let's shift gears from the silly to the, well, bit more serious. There's this law forbidding snake handling in churches, specifically. West Virginia Code, Section 61218. And this one is a bit more complicated because you're dealing with religious freedom, but also public safety.
Absolutely. And you see this debate all over the country, not just West Virginia. On the one hand, people have the right to practice their religion however they see fit, which is like a core American value. But on the other hand, the government also has to make sure people are safe. And when those two things clash, it can get tricky really fast.
No doubt. It really makes you realize how much goes into creating laws and upholding them. It's not always simple, right?
Nope. Lots of gray areas for sure.
Okay, are you ready for a time warp? Back to when PDA was a big no-no.
Uh-huh. All right, lay it on me.
So back in the day, unmarried couples in West Virginia couldn't show any affection in public. We're talking a straight-up law against lewd and lascivious behavior.
Wow.
Now, I know what you're thinking, but back then, even holding hands could get you in trouble.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Talk about how much times have changed, huh? What was once scandalous is now, well, pretty much expected.
It's amazing to think about how what's considered okay changes over time. What might have been like super offensive back then is totally normal now. Makes you wonder what'll be taboo 100 years from now.
All right, buckle up for this one. It's a personal favorite. In West Virginia, you can have roadkill for dinner legally. I'm serious. West Virginia Code Section 22-4. If you find a deer that's, well, met its end on the road, you can call it in to the Division of Natural Resources, and then dinner time.
That's wild. I've actually heard of that one before. And honestly, beyond the initial like shock factor, it actually kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's very practical.
Yeah. No waste.
Mm.
Using resources. It's like a connection to the land that we've kind of lost with, supermarkets and all that.
Plus, think of the stories at your next dinner party. Oh, this venison, just a little something I picked up on Route 64. But seriously, it does make you think about how laws can reflect what a community values, right? In this case, respecting nature, not being wasteful.
Totally. It shows how culture and economics shape laws. Really interesting.
Okay, switching gears to something a little heavier. Firearms and mental health. Laws around this have changed a lot over time. West Virginia, like a lot of states, has struggled to find that balance.
Oh, for sure. In the past, there were laws to stop people with mental illness from owning guns, which on the surface sounds like a good idea, right?
Right.
But the old laws, they had loopholes, so a judge could just say, nope, it's fine.
Yeah, it's not as straightforward as it seems.
Not at all. It shows how hard it is to make laws that actually work and also protect individual rights.
Absolutely. And we're not going to get political here, but it's a good example of how tricky lawmaking can be. Okay, how about this one? You can't duel if you want to be in government in West Virginia.
You're kidding, right?
Nope. It's not just some random law either. It's in the West Virginia Constitution, Article 4, Section 10. It's like a throwback to when duels were a legitimate way to settle disagreements. At least for certain people, I guess.
Wow, that's amazing. Can you imagine a politician today challenging their opponent to a duel?
The headlines would be insane, but it is a fun reminder that even laws can have a bit of, quirky history to them.
It definitely adds some personality to their legal system.
Speaking of unique, let's talk about hitting the slopes after one too many Apresky drinks. West Virginia Code Section 23A5 says no skiing under the influence, which, Seems pretty obvious, right?
Yeah. No one wants a drunk skier on the mountain. It's just common sense.
Exactly. But it is interesting that they had to make it a law. Maybe back in the day it wasn't so obvious, or at least the consequences weren't spelled out.
Makes sense. So it's like a reminder that sometimes laws are there to spell things out, to set boundaries, even for things that should be common sense.
Now, this one might make you want to watch your language, especially if you like to express yourself colorfully.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Swearing in public could cost you a pretty penny in West Virginia. West Virginia Code, Section 61-815, lays down the law on using bad language in public. And yep, there are fines. It's another one of those laws that probably wouldn't hold up in court today, but it does make you think about how what's considered offensive language has changed.
For sure. It's all about free speech and what people find acceptable. Big debate there.
While we're on the topic of changing expectations, West Virginia also has this interesting law about education. Schools have to teach good manners and etiquette. It's in West Virginia Code, Section 18-2-9. Now, some people might think that's kind of old-fashioned, but maybe there's something to be said for teaching those skills, especially in today's world where online communication can be, well, not so polite.
It's an interesting point. Makes you think about what's important to teach and how that reflects our values as a society. Maybe there's a case for bringing back etiquette, even if it needs a modern twist.
Right. Okay, last one for this segment. And this one's really interesting given all that's been happening lately. Apparently, if you have a history of betting on horse races, you can't hold public office in West Virginia.
Seriously. That's wild, especially with gambling being legal now, even in West Virginia.
Right. It shows how views on gambling have shifted, and it makes you wonder how old laws fit with, well, reality.
Absolutely. It's a perfect example of how things change, and sometimes laws just haven't caught up.
But that's a whole other conversation. For now, we've barely scratched the surface of West Virginia's wild legal world, and trust me, there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, it's a real trip through legal history. And sometimes those echoes from the past, they can be pretty fun.
Oh, for sure. All right, ready for a law that's so specific it's like ripped straight from a small town news headline?
Fit me.
Okay, so in West Virginia, you need a permit to keep a ferret, like a ferret permit.
Now, that's a new one. Makes you wonder, right? What in the world happened to make that a law? Was there like some big ferret incident back in the day?
Right. Picture it. A mischievous ferret on the loose, total mayhem, and suddenly, bam, ferret permits are a thing.
It just shows you, even the smallest things can leave their mark on the law.
That's true. It's like you never know what's going to spark a new law. Okay, ready for one that really feels like it's from another time.
Always. What you got?
Get this. Apparently in West Virginia, you could be arrested for making fun of someone who refuses a duel.
Wait, seriously?
Seriously. Back then, saying no to a duel was a huge chi insult, a blow to your honor, to the point where even laughing at someone for doing it could land you in trouble. It's so different from how we think today.
Yeah, peaceful resolutions are kind of the goal now.
Big time. It really highlights how much social values have changed, and how the legal system reflects that.
Speaking of laws from a different time, did you know it's illegal to hunt on Sundays in West Virginia?
Oh yeah, the classic blue law. Lots of states have those, especially ones with a strong religious background, like certain things you just don't do on Sundays. It's interesting, right, how those traditions ended up in the law, even in a country that's supposed to separate church and state. Makes you think if those laws still make sense today, in a society where not everyone believes the same things.
Definitely food for thought. It's a tricky issue, that's for sure. Okay, ready for a real head scratcher?
Lay it on me.
So get this, in West Virginia, there's no minimum age to use tobacco.
Wait, hold up. You're telling me like a 5-year-old could legally smoke there? That can't be right.
Well, technically that's what the state law says. But there's a catch. Federal law says you got to be 21 to buy tobacco. So it creates this weird legal situation.
So conflicting laws causing confusion, it just goes to show, even with all these rules and regulations, things aren't always black and white.
Exactly. You got to have clear laws, especially when it comes to health and stuff.
For sure. Okay, here's one that's super specific, but actually kind of relevant to modern life. It's illegal to block a sidewalk with your luggage in West Virginia.
You know what? With all the rolling suitcases and overpacked backpacks these days, that law suddenly makes a lot of sense.
Right. Try navigating a busy sidewalk when someone's got their giant suitcase sprawled out. It's a recipe for pedestrian traffic jams.
Totally. It's like a message from the past saying, hey, be aware of your surroundings. Think about other people.
Love it. All right, last one before we move on. And this one's pretty interesting given all the, well, current events. In West Virginia, it's illegal to wear a mask in public.
Whoa. That is interesting, especially after the whole COVID thing when masks were, everywhere. It shows how sometimes old laws just clash with, like, reality.
It's a big reminder that lawmaking is always changing, always trying to keep up with new challenges and what society thinks is acceptable. And sometimes it means going back and rethinking those old laws that don't make sense anymore, or worse, end up causing problems.
Couldn't agree more. It really shows how dynamic the law is and how we need to keep talking about it, questioning it. So what other legal gems have you found digging through all this?
And we're back with our deep dive into the strange world of West Virginia laws. From whistling underwater to, well, the more serious stuff we've seen a lot. But trust me, there's still plenty more to uncover in this state's legal history.
It's amazing how these laws, even the ones that seem kind of outdated, give us a peek into the past. You can see what people were worried about, what they valued, even their sense of humor.
All right, ready to bust a myth? This one's been floating around online, and it's just too crazy to ignore. Ever heard that in West Virginia, it's legal to beat your wife on the courthouse steps?
Oh yeah, that one. Classic legal urban legend. It's so out there, so obviously made up. It's hard to believe people actually think it's true.
But they do. And that's why it's important to set the record straight. There's zero proof that this law ever existed in West Virginia or anywhere else in the U.S. It's totally fake news.
Right. It's a good reminder that not everything you see online is real, especially those super sensational stories. Always double check your sources, right?
For sure. Back to the actual laws, even the weird ones. Have you ever tried to sleep on a train?
Can't say I have. Sounds kind of uncomfortable if you ask me.
Well, in West Virginia, it's illegal. And I don't know about you, but I can't picture anyone trying to enforce that on a crowded train during rush hour. It's just one of those laws that feels completely out of touch with how we live today.
Yeah, it's definitely from a different era of train travel, back when things were probably a lot different. Maybe they were worried about safety or etiquette, but these days it just seems kind of silly.
Okay, ready for one that's both super specific and totally impractical. In West Virginia, you can't have an ice cream cone in your back pocket.
An ice cream cone in your back pocket, really?
Uh,
It's got to be more about common sense than the law, right?
Seriously, who would even think to put an ice cream cone in their back pocket? You're just asking for a sticky mess. But hey, maybe that's how the law got started. Someone learned that lesson the hard way, and the rest is history.
It's definitely possible. It shows you how some of these laws come from everyday things, sometimes funny, sometimes not, things that catch the attention of lawmakers, and, well, here we are.
So, as we wrap up our journey into the weird and wacky world of West Virginia law, what's the biggest thing you've learned from all this?
You know what strikes me the most is how these laws, even the ones that seem strange or outdated now, they give us a glimpse into the past. They show us what people were thinking, what they cared about, even how they saw the world. And while some might seem silly today, they remind us that the legal system is like a mirror of society, always changing, sometimes making mistakes, but always trying to bring order to all the, well, chaos of being human.
That's a great way to put it. It really makes you think, the laws we have today, the ones we think are normal, might seem just as weird to people in the future. It makes you wonder what they'll think of us, what they'll think of the rules we live by.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. What will people think of our laws in the future? What will they find strange or funny?
That's a whole other deep dive. But for now, thanks for joining us on this exploration of the strange, the wonderful, and sometimes the downright baffling world of West Virginia law. And hey, next time you hear about a weird law, don't just brush it off, look into it. You might uncover a fascinating piece of history. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. The West Virginia Media Lab is all about celebrating our state and its people, businesses, stories, news, and folklore. If you love West Virginia like we do, be sure to comment below, then subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell to stay connected. Until next time, stay wild, wonderful, West Virginia.